around the concept of punishment in our society, and the general view that society has about punishment. I'm going to be referring to my notes because I spent some time writing out a lot of what I want to say here. So I'm going to be referring to that quite frequently, so bear with me on that. I'm going to start out talking a little bit about some stuff that happened to me when I was a child. Now, those of you that have watched my YouTube channel know that I was raised Mennonite, as I mentioned in some of my earlier videos. I was raised a very conservative religion. They don't allow things like musical instruments. As a woman, I had to wear long dark dresses all the time, keep myself modestly covered all the time. It was just generally very suppressive, and they believed very firmly in punishment, such as spare the rod, spoil the child, as many of you have heard that term. They believed in that very firmly, to the point where there was a lot of corporal punishment in the form of spankings multiple times a day. And as a small child, this was very traumatizing in combination with the emotional atmosphere of neglect, of suppression, and being taught from the beginning that there's something inherently bad, which is what a lot of Christianity in particular, I'm speaking about Christianity because that's the one that I grew up in, that's the one that I'm most well familiar with. So much of Christianity seems to be about telling people that there's something inherently bad, that you can only be saved through the blood of Christ, or something similar that people are talking about, such as we're inherently flawed and we're only perfect through the light of God, or something like that. I have a lot of sorrow around the concept of that. And the concept of punishment, as if there's something bad about us that needs to get punished and beaten out of us. And you see it in their justice system, with the way that we're so quick to try to punish things, as if we can beat something out of someone. When that doesn't work, it actually suppresses it even further and makes it an even bigger problem. Okay, so in the Mennonite group, like I mentioned, they didn't allow things like musical instruments. I mean, it was literally that suppressed. We were literally that suppressed. And we were being corporally spanked in the form of punishment every day for multiple things, and some of the silliest things. It was an authoritarian dictatorship atmosphere. You didn't really have a whole lot of leeway or freedom in that environment. As an adult, I now find myself struggling and wrestling with remembering what it was like to be a child and undergoing that type of authoritarian dictatorship atmosphere of punishment and spankings. And I think about the damage and the heartbreak that it caused. And it's caused me to really question punishment and question why we feel this need to inflict punishment. And it's not even just like this concept of punishment expands farther than just like from childhood. It's in the way that we treat our partners and our family and ourselves and the people around us when they do something what we call bad. First of all, I've always wanted to encourage people to question the concept of what is bad in the first place. Bad is really just about it causes pain to life and harms life in some way. And so when you're saying someone's bad, what you're saying is that they're somehow harming life, except that no one really consciously defines the term bad. They kind of just say you're inherently flawed and damaged, and then that's that, and they never actually clarify it. So I am wanting to bring some clarification to some of this. My issues with punishment. Okay, so I lost a friend recently, and it made me, the way that it happened, it really made me pay attention to how we treat each other when we feel like we've been wronged in some way. We perceive abandonment or betrayal of some form, and we will try to punish the other person in the form of, it comes in many forms, it can be something like verbal abuse, or telling, being just emotionally distant with them, not wanting to actually talk about what actually happened. It takes a lot of forms. It can be like just shunning someone to the point where you just won't have anything to do with them anymore, rather than, which is very hurtful to both parties as it destroys a connection. Conflict is an opportunity for deepening a connection and strengthening friendships. And when people choose to not see that aspect and they punish each other by pulling apart and pushing each other away instead, it can be very damaging and hurtful. Let me turn the page here. As we take punishment in the society very seriously, and it seems to be a holdover from religion, telling us that we were inherently flawed, inherently bad, and we needed some higher deity to make us somehow inherently better, and that even through God's love and even through God's grace, we still were just this worm, this slimy, awful thing, and that still attitude is still so pervasive. Look at how much self-hatred that we have towards ourselves. Look at the way that we view each other as human beings. When was the last time you actually said, I love humanity and how beautiful they are? Most likely you said something like, people are stupid and I hate humanity and we're a plague on the planet. You know, something self-abusive and cruel like that, rather than seeing the inherent value that we have. Because we've been adopting this belief now for a very long time, that there's something inherently wrong about us, and there's not. How many of us have heard the term, or have said the term, we're not perfect and we're inherently flawed, and etc., etc., etc. It's almost like we're afraid to stand up and say, I am good enough, I am perfect, and there's nothing wrong with me. I'm good enough. I am divine. I'm perfect. Now people will automatically go on the defensive, like, oh my God, you think like you have no room to grow? Like, no, that's not what I'm saying here. What I am saying is that our life itself, and life is inherently perfect. It's simply a matter of exploring and expanding and evolving that perfection, that inherent perfection that already exists within each one of us, within every single molecule of life itself. We're simply life unfolding. It's perfection. That's it. And that concept, that perspective of recognizing that we're already good enough, we're already lovable, we're already amazing, as life itself, that is so transformative. When you begin to look at life like that, it transforms your perspective. It's from something that's bad and needs to be punished, to have that bad stuff beaten out of them, to that needs to be caretaken, that needs to be heard, that needs to be explored. That is a piece of life that is in the process of unfolding itself, and it has something beautiful and perfect to offer us if we are conscious enough to give it a chance to unfold, to try to understand. I am personally very, very dissatisfied with our justice system, or as I call the injustice system. I have some friends that ended up in the prison system, and it is very heartbreaking for me to watch, because I knew them very well when I was a small child. I grew up with them. I saw how much turbulence they were in, and how much pain and how much anger, and the pain that the anger that they developed was coming from. And the system, this thing that we call the justice system, which is wrongly named because it's more about the injustice system, but it is now putting them in prison. It's doing nothing to address the root causes of why they're acting the way that they're acting, and why they did what they did to get locked up in prison in the first place. And this is so destructive, because there's so many people in our prison system. So many people are suffering, and we as a society have the capacity to begin to shift this, to begin to find alternative methods to help these people, to help ourselves, and to come up with alternative solutions, and to just locking them up. punishment is so abusive, and it makes you a perpetrator. When you punish someone else, you have become the perpetrator. A perpetrator is nothing more than that which inflicts hurt upon life. When you punish someone, whether it's in the form of spanking, shutting them out of your life, putting yourself down, punishing yourself for look if you're punishing yourself, it's because you're trying to it's like a roundabout way of trying to make yourself do something that you think you should do, or try to make yourself stop doing something that you think that you shouldn't be doing, and you think that if you can hurt yourself bad enough, it's going to somehow make you be different. And this is, of course, is like this idea, like this Pavlov's response idea, that if you make something suffer enough, it'll have an aversion to it. And do we really want to have that? Like, is that really how we want to live our lives? Being afraid to, like, doing stuff because we're afraid, or the alternative is to do things because it comes from our inspiration, it comes from our passion, it comes from our love for life, and that's our motivation, versus doing it because we're afraid. Punishment does nothing to address the underlying feelings that motivated the behavior in the first place. All it does is it's basically revenge on the person for behaving that way, and it's basically inflicting more hurt on top of the hurt. So it's basically like, if you cut your arm, instead of putting a band-aid on it, punishment would be like taking a knife and cutting it even deeper. That's not the way to make your wound heal. The way to heal is to caretake it, to recognize that there is a wound there in the first place, that you can caretake it. And that's the first step in even beginning to address finding a solution, an alternative solution to punishment. The alternative solutions being, one, understanding that there is an underlying feeling that's motivating the behavior and seeking to address that feeling itself directly and begin making change there, giving assistance there, giving support there, giving sensitivity and understanding. Often that in and of itself will be what is necessary to change the behavior, because you've addressed the underlying feeling that motivated the behavior, and then you don't even need punishment. Seek to compassionately explore what the underlying feeling could be. Consider experiences that might have created the pain. If you're really frustrated at what someone else did, for example, I find that really helpful for myself. If I'm trying to understand why someone's behaving the way that they did, I brainstorm about potential experiences they had in their childhood that maybe motivated that behavior. Obviously, in the instance where I was talking in the earlier video about my childhood friends that were in the prison system, an alternative method to dealing with that situation would be to begin helping them, like, first of all, creating the therapies and the systems that can provide emotional support for these people, for all of us, honestly, that in general will make our society more healthy, more integrated, and more compassionate for all of us. Now, when I say that punishment is outdated and damaging, and when I start talking about the prison system, I know a lot of people who watch this video will automatically jump to, oh my god, what about rapists and murderers, and we're supposed to just let them out of prison? Hold on. Let's not jump from A to Z, okay? Let's just go from A to B, okay? Let's just acknowledge, first of all, that behaviors are being motivated by underlying feelings, okay? That's the first step. Then we can begin to compassionately explore what that feeling could be. We can begin to have systems created and therapies created, some of which already exist and some which will begin to be created as we begin to shift the paradigm and the perspective. We are going to make some changes. We have the capacity to make some changes to the way that we're addressing unsavory behaviors. So first of all, like we said, we're going to start with addressing the feelings, helping people get to the bottom of it, what they're feeling, so they can begin to find resolution and healing for the, say if there's someone that has a lot of anger, okay, and then they express that anger in the form of violence. We would have therapists, we would have maybe have them in a setting where they were where other people were maybe protected, maybe out external society was more protected from them from that violence. Um, and while they were able to work with therapists and people that didn't see them as bad or evil or tried to punish them, but more that they were just being supported and assisted in working through those emotions as they come up and finding resolution for the child at whatever traumas that created the feelings in the first place that motivated the violence that then led to things like rape and murder. Okay, I'm not saying go let everyone out right away. I'm saying let's just go A to B, B to C, and we will begin to find resolution to the point where we're probably will be able to get to a society where things like rape and murder are obsolete because we have a more compassionate, more sensitive, more emotionally conscious society that never lets its children and its citizens get to the point of emotional suppression and emotional powerlessness and emotional hurt to where they're even going to act out in such a violent manner, because by the time someone gets to something like rape and murder, they've had years and years of suppression and trauma that's been unresolved and unresolved and unresolved. And there were so many times during all that time where if they had had if someone had taken time to get to the root cause of their emotional distress, to even recognize that they were in emotional distress instead of just making them out to be the bad guy, getting down into the root core of it, that they would have had those issues resolved long before it snowballed into something that created so much hurt and suffering on the world around them. So for those individuals that are jumping, like, what are we going to do in the meantime? Okay, well, the first step is let's acknowledge that there is an alternative solution. Let's begin to explore those alternative solutions. Let's begin to make a society that's more compassionate, more aware, more willing to contemplate that there can be another way to do this. We are a creative enough species, we're an innovative species, and we have the capacity to do this. Yes, it's going to take some creativity, it's going to take a lot of self-reflection, self-presence, enough that we're even able to progress to having creating the centers and having the people that are there to at those centers that can help anyone that comes in and helps them work through whatever emotions they're dealing with and find resolution and healing on that so that they don't keep having the behaviors. Okay, we're gonna get there. We're right now we're in the infant stage of it, and we're at A, okay, and we're trying to get to B, and then once we've created those centers, more and more people are going to begin to have resolution, that they are then going to be people that are going to be able to offer more sensitivity and more presence towards other people around them, and this is going to create ripple effects into society until as more and more people can become on board with it, it affects the general paradigms of the society that one's in, and that in general will create more and more, like, we'll be able to create seed centers that allow people to resolve their trauma, and then when people see that that's working, that's helping, then we can create more centers, and that is just going to kind of snowball into the society, and children will be being treated differently, more compassionately, more with more emotional presence, more sensitivity, more consciousness, and they will not be as prone to growing up to have the issues that we currently are facing. So there are alternatives to punishment, and we're getting there. We're beginning to move in that direction. I hope this video was thought-provoking and inspiring in some way. All my love to you.